Every time I question what my future has in store, I get to panicking anxiety, can't live here no more. No more. 'Cause I'll convince myself that I don't want what I really want. I'll end it before it starts. Call it protecting my heart, hurt disguised as strength. Self-sabotage my love. Self-sabotage my love. The root of my own pain. No one's coming. Save your baby girl. Hey, you got to save yourself. No one's coming. Save your baby girl. Hey, yeah, you got to save yourself. Save yourself. You did that. Yeah, you crossed the line about 1,000 times and I did that. Yeah, I stayed a while, tried to make it right. Cigarette. No, I never smoked, but my heart is broke, explosive. Stressing for that old thing back. That initial love, all the goosebumps, those flutters in my gut, turn into disgust. What a waste of love, babe. I just wanna go back to how it was, lay in each other's arms all day. Send me gifts just because. Tell me where we went wrong. Started out as homies, ended up as lovers. How'd it get so ugly? Can't we rediscover, baby, what it was? Or let's be honest, it was just a lover. You were so romantic, we were picture perfect. So much freaking passion, why we never got it back, babe? It was just a lover. Really wish you didn't push me away. I was willing to try long as it takes. I would never say we were a mistake, but fleeting romance doesn't a lifetime make. That initial flight, all the goosebumps, those flutters in my gut, turn into disgust. What a waste of love, babe. I just wanna go back to how it was, baby.
What's going on? What's going on, everybody? Welcome back. Welcome to Nelson Media, where we talk all things mental health, where we break down personality disorders, where we break down mental illness, and we talk about everything that's kind of going on in the online world and dealing with the psychology of why people do some of the things that they do. We have a really, really good show tonight. I am really excited about this conversation that we're going to have tonight. There was a long time ago, I had a friend. I was actually young. I was really young. And I found out that one of my friends, she was depressed and she was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. And as I was kind of going through life with this person, there was different times when I got really confused about what was going on. So I was with her during times when she was like really, really depressed, like really, really down. And this is before I knew anything about what depression was, or anything involving mental health. But she was down for a long period of time to where I didn't know what to do for her. I didn't know how I could help her. I didn't know what was going on. And I remember being young, and I remember one day we all went on a trip to Six Flags Great Adventure. And on that trip, it was like a whole new person. She was just so happy and excited about everything and seemed to have like a new lease on life. And in my mind, I was like, "Oh, this is great. Like she's out of the woods, like everything is great now. This is going to be the start of like a whole new journey for her. Maybe she just needed to get outside of her environment and get somewhere where she could relax." And what I didn't understand at the time is this would she would go through a cycle sometimes where these types of things would happen. She had times when she was really up, but then she had times when she was really down. And as I got into my profession and as I got into practicing counseling more, I started understanding more and more about what what I was looking at and what I was seeing, and more importantly, how I could support her inside of this. Because um, I'm not sure if a lot of you know, like inside the especially in the Black community, I can't speak for every community, but bipolar disorder is often mistaken with being crazy. And this is partly society, how the media portrays it. You know, for whatever reason, that association has become a part of it, that and it's a very very negative stereotype, and it has actually nothing at all to do with it. And we say it, so a lot of us say it so casually, like, "Oh, I'm crazy, I got my bipolar moments." No, that's actually not something that we should be speaking on that way, because the people that actually do suffer and deal with it, is that may not be their experience. It's not their experience. They're not crazy. So part of what I want to do on this channel is I like to do some myth busting. So I want to kind of get the record straight today on what can bipolar disorder look like. And as we look online, a lot of you that follow me go onto other streams and panels as well, and you see a lot of different content creators that have unique personalities, and some of the things that we see them do on their channels and ways that they behave, we end up associating negative behaviors, or what we define as crazy. We start associating these things with bipolar, and some of the content creators that I've even seen have referred to themselves in this way, and it's really messed up. It's really messed up a lot of things for us. So today, that is what we are going to get into. So the schedule for this week is, today we are going to be talking about bipolar disorder and content creation, and I have an amazing guest that I'm going to bring up, and we're going to have this discussion. Tomorrow we're going to dig more into some case conceptualization, and we're going to talk about another heading back into our kind of narcissistic personality disorders and borderline personalities. We're going to head back into those realms tomorrow, and then on Friday we're going to have another discussion with another guest. So for today, we have Miss Nicole Howson. Nicole Howson's a social media manager and a strategist and a mental health advocate. She speaks about mental illness, specifically on mental wellness, which is a big thing. Mental wellness, bipolar disorder, depression, anxiety, and PTSD. So she knows a lot about a lot. So she's been published 10 times for The Mighty and has been interviewed by CBC and CTV News. Now Nicole focuses on helping other online marketers and freelancers grow their businesses while not falling into toxic hustle culture. Being successful does not have to come hand in hand with burnout. And as being diagnosed as a teen with depression and anxiety, and later on with bipolar disorder at the age of 20, and then PTSD at the age of 25, Nicole now strives to support those who struggle and destroy all the stigma that is surrounding mental illness. So without further ado, I am going to bring up Miss Nicole. Miss Nicole, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Thank you. Thank you for coming up. Thank you for being a part of this tonight.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So I know I just kind of read off your bio, but can you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah. So I, as you just mentioned, have lots of mental health concerns. but I'm learning to manage them all and live with them and be the best person that I can be and the most successful person that I can be. So I've lived with that actually because of my mental health. That's why I started my business in the first place. I actually attempted suicide twice and then ended up moving back home from college to with my parents and started my business a few months later, just because I needed a job to do from home. I really like marketing. I like social media marketing. I was like, you know what, I'm gonna try this because I'm not really in a position where I can get up and do a 9 to 5 right now. I'm not there yet. So I started my business, and that was 9 years ago this month. So I've been doing it a while. I really enjoy it, and people have come to me multiple times and like, how do you deal with like you live with this now and how like it's not fair that it happened to you and how do you manage it and everything? And I'm like, you know what, like if I gotta live with it, I'm gonna talk about it. I'm gonna tell people. I'm gonna show people how to live with it and be successful and move past it. I read so many things when I was first diagnosed with bipolar disorder about how I was gonna have a welfare or disability and I wouldn't be able to. And I was like, what? That's not what I want for my life at all. And so I was like, you know what? There's got to be a different way. So I made a different way for me, and now it's just my thing that I want other people who are struggling, whether it's depression, anxiety, PTSD, bipolar disorder, whatever. I want them to be able to take this and then move past it. I went through a period of time where my mental health was okay-ish, but I went so far into this hustle culture that everybody was teaching online that I ended up burning out and then fell into a really deep depression and ended up hospitalized for it. So I was like, you know what, this is not working. Clearly what I did to grow my business the first time did not work. I ended up losing my whole business after that point, and had to rebuild it after that. So this time, after rebuilding it, I'm like, okay, what am I going to do differently? And I actually kept track of all those things so that way I can help other people do the same thing.
Can you tell me about use a interesting term? Use toxic hustle culture. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, so we hear a lot of times like the statements like I'll sleep when I'm dead or like sleeps for the weary or whatever, and how we have to work all the time, we have to work all the hours and you got to do all the things so you can be the best person and the best business owner and become a millionaire and all these things. And the more I fell into this like concept of where I was going to do this, I realized that it was hurting me more than anything. And I wasn't being the most successful that I could be because I was burnt out. I was exhausted. I wasn't getting enough sleep. It affected my mood and my emotions and everything else. And honestly, I don't even think that was because of bipolar or anxiety, depression, or anything. I think it was just basic science. If you're not getting enough sleep, you're not eating properly, you're going to feel crappy and it's going to affect yourself. So this toxic hustle culture, I do believe that hustling is okay at times. And I'm like everybody else, I'll have sprint weeks where I'm like, I'm going to work really hard. I'm going to work extra hours. I'm going to do all the things. The difference between that and what I was doing before is I can have those weeks, but I still take time for my self-care. I take time to make sure I'm getting 8 hours of sleep at night. I'm drinking my water. I'm doing X, Y, and Z. I'm eating meals. I'm taking care of myself in that process. So hustle culture isn't necessarily the bad thing. It's when we take it to that whole new step of I'm not taking care of myself anymore because everything is going into my work or business or whatever.
So inside of your in your when your bio, when we kind of like read through it, there's been long periods of time where it seems like at different moments you've gotten another diagnosis, like you talked about it at one, the depression diagnosis, then the anxiety, and then the bipolar disorder, and then PTSD.
Yeah.
How young were you when you first felt like something was off or something was wrong, and how did you know? Like, how did you know?
As far as I can remember, to be honest.
Oh, really?
As long as I can remember all my childhood, everything, something felt different. And I was a normal, happy kid. People used to call me Smiley all the time. And part of that is when I'm like really stressed or I'm focusing, I get this stupid grin on my face. So I was always stressed. So I was always smiling. But I always felt like something was a little bit off. And I remember I was probably 14. And I remember having like one of those moments, a typical teenager, not every teenager is like that, but I don't know, stereotypical teenager, where I wasn't getting along with my parents and I was throwing an attitude and doing all the things. And my mom looked at me, she's like, look, if you don't stop this, you're not going to this birthday party you want to go to on the weekend. And I remember going to the bathroom and slamming the door, and I was so mad. And I looked in the mirror and I was like, you have to stop. You are going to get grounded. You're not going to be able to go to this party. You have to calm down. And it's like I couldn't control it, and I swing the door back open and just took off. And my mom was like, yep, well, you lost your birthday party. And I remember thinking to myself, I didn't want to do that. Like, that's not, it's like I had no control over it whatsoever. And now understanding that what bipolar disorder is, it's not very commonly diagnosed when you're young, but that's a real situation where I had no control over it. I was picking fights constantly with my mom, and she's like, I don't know what's wrong with you. And now looking back, we're like, oh yeah, no, that makes sense. As soon as I got the diagnosis of bipolar disorder, I started going to therapy, I got my medication. I was like, oh wow, like I can actually like use my brain and think through all the things and not act impulsively, and swing from really depressed to really, really manic and all those things. So it from as long as I can remember, it's been a thing.
So I know with bipolar disorder, it looks different, and it can look different between children to adults. With children, you can see more of the rapid cycling between the emotions, and you just kind of mentioned like having that bathroom feeling of like feeling like you couldn't control it, and then of course everything that happened after that. What were some of the different things that, like, at the time, since y'all didn't know what it was, what were y'all trying to do to help get your emotions under control?
That's unfortunately something that we weren't very good at. There was a lot of punishments, and my parents did the best they could, and it wasn't their fault. Nobody talked about mental health. That wasn't a thing that people were talking about in our community, where it was like, oh yeah, like depression looks like this and anxiety looks like this. And it wasn't until I was 16 and I saw a doctor, and I was like, look, like this is what's going on. She's like, I think you have anxiety. And I was like, oh, okay. But even in that moment, she was a Christian doctor. And even in that moment, she looked at me and goes, so I could put you on some medication, or you could pray that it goes away. And so being the going into Bible college person that I was at the time, I was like, oh yeah, I'll pray it away. It didn't work, guys. I to this day, I still believe in the power of prayer and everything like that. That's not an issue. But I also believe that there's medication out there for a reason, and it's okay to take it. And so looking back, I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know how many times people were like, just try harder. And I was like, that's not working. And I just thought something was wrong with me because I was trying so hard and I wasn't getting anywhere with it. It's because my brain, just the chemistry in my brain, and it was impossible to control that, because it was just the chemicals in my brain and all the things. And so knowing that now, I'm like, oh my gosh. So we talk about it a lot more, like in our family. I'm very vocal on social media about it. I can like see, like I have a nephew, he literally was just diagnosed autistic, and looking, and I was like, guys, that doesn't look like a typical child situation. And being able to talk to them about that. And I mean, I'm no expert, but like being able to be like, hey, hold on, like let's actually deal with the issue of why he's acting this way, not because like it's just he was triggered. And knowing that, and so having those conversations with people now is really interesting. I wish it was something we had done when I was a kid.
So even as a kid, what were some of the like, how would you describe like some of the emotions that, like, was it the anger that was mostly manifesting? Like, what was going on for you?
Yeah, so I'm not a very angry person in general. I was more as a teenager, and I think it was just because I was either so anxious or so depressed that I bottled it up and then it would explode. As I got older, I learned how to deal with that and cope with that in different ways. Some were unhealthy, and then over time I got healthy coping mechanisms and stuff. But I wasn't really necessarily an angry person, but I was very emotional in general. And I think that's where a lot of the problem came in, because my mom would look at me and be like, look, I understand you don't want to help us clean the house today, but you need to stop crying. And looking back, I'm like, yeah, I was severely depressed. It it took everything within me to get out of bed, and then you wanted me to help you clean your house, and I was like, I can't. So looking back at it now, it's like, oh wow, like that was, I wasn't crying because I didn't want to help. I was crying because I wasn't okay. And knowing that now, I didn't have the words at that time to articulate this is how I'm feeling and something's wrong. I read or saw an interview a few years ago about I think it was Demi Lovato, who has bipolar disorder, and she was saying growing up, she truly didn't believe she'd get to the age of adulthood. She believed she'd die before then, and I was like, oh my gosh, I thought that was just a me thing. Like I literally never thought I'd get past 18 years old, and so I didn't plan past 18. I was like, oh yeah, I'll start Bible college, but I'm not actually going to become a pastor because I'm never going to get I'm not gonna get that far. And so truly in my brain, it was like, nope, this is your end date. And I didn't know if I was just gonna die from natural causes or if I was going to attempt, but I had written it off. And looking back now, like when I turned 19, I was like, what do we do now? I was so not prepared because I genuinely, wholeheartedly didn't believe I was gonna be here. And so knowing that and being like, oh wow, that's the thing that a lot of people, especially with bipolar disorder, deal with. And looking back, I'm like, wow, yep, you can definitely see it now.
So a lot of people describe it as a roller coaster, like
Yeah.
have those high highs, but when those lows come, it
hmm
is really, really low. Is that kind of like part of the experience that you've had?
Yeah. So I am more, my body tends to go more depressive than manic.
Mm.
I maybe not so much as a teenager, that sort of thing. With my medication, if I experience any mood issues, it's usually depression. I'm on some pretty heavy mood stabilizers though, which is helpful.
Mm.
Because being manic isn't as fun as it may look. For some people on television, it's not, and it's nothing like you see on TV. But
How would you describe it?
so for me, I was very uncharacteristic. So for example, I was in Bible college, training to be a pastor, and then I suddenly dropped out of college and moved in with my boyfriend and ran away from home. Like just packed everything up and disappeared. And my parents were like, what's going on? Like, wait, this is not you. And of course it wasn't, because my brain was not the way it was supposed to be, and I was manic. I spent way too much money on things I didn't need, or I don't even know where half my money went. My dad looked at me when I got back and he's like, where'd your money go? And I'm like, I don't know. I really don't know. Spending too much money, doing things that I never would have done before. For me, it feels like like everything is going too fast. And I can't keep up, when actual fact, it's me that's going way too fast. So I talk way too fast. My friend was just talking to me the other day about it. She's like, I remember when you were manic and you would call and I'd see your name pop up on the phone. She's like, I wanted to talk to you or my friend, but she's like, I had to brace myself because it was like boom, 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 boom to different conversations so fast. She's like, I have ADHD and I couldn't I was like, I don't even talk that fast. And so looking back, she's like, yeah, she's like, now that I know that's manic, she's like, I know what to look for when you're not doing so great. And so I'm just talking really fast. I've always felt dizzy, almost like it felt like a dizzy, like unsettling feeling. And so that's for me what it feels like. Everybody's different, but that's my
Right.
experience.
But no, a lot of people really don't understand that. Unfortunately, that word manic is
Mhm.
so powerful and dangerous
Yeah.
because it's just thrown out there in so many different contexts that a lot of people just don't understand
Mhm.
what can manic look like. And so, with people getting more educated, becoming more educated on bipolar disorder, and knowing that being manic can mean like your senses are heightened. It can manifest itself as like impulsive spending. For some people, it's risky behaviors. Like it looks different, and for you, it came down to this time period where you just made a decision to just pack up and run away with your boyfriend.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so a lot of people would look at that as just like, oh well, something must have happened at home. She must have got tired of family, or something must have happened. She just decided to act out, not knowing that, like, no, this is part of a cycle that I go through.
Mhm.
So I might be manic right now, but you might talk to me 2 weeks later and I'm laying in my bed. I can't get up. I don't want to move.
Like, yeah.
And that's part of the really difficult part about it. I had a person that I knew. She had a nice job. It was a like a mid-level management job, and she really struggled on her job because she had to force herself during times she was bipolar. So she during times when she was really down and really depressed, she had to
Hmm.
force herself to get up and go to work.
Hmm.
And she was so agitated at work because she didn't want to be there.
Hmm.
She would lash out at her coworkers, and she appeared to them as always being, standoffish and angry for no reason, but not understanding that like it took every last bit of her strength to get up and get there. And then
Hmm.
but on the opposite end, she'll have these times where it's like she's the life of the party. She'll go to the club, and this is kind of where you see some of the mania where you can be hypomanic sometimes, and it's
Hmm.
where she can go to a club, she can go drinking Friday night, get an hour of sleep if that, and the next night be right back at the club drinking again. Like
Hmm.
it really can hit you
Yeah.
that hard.
Hmm.
What do you remember for yourself being like some of those moments where it was like, did you catch yourself knowing that like, okay, I might be a little manic right now, or like what types of things did you kind of do?
Yeah, so I had my major manic episode that led to severe depression because what goes up must come down.
Yeah.
And so I had a severe depression, ended up attempting suicide twice, and I started taking the medication and everything. And it was a few years later, and they changed one of my medications. I wasn't liking the medication I was on. I felt gross in my own skin.
Mm-hmm.
It caused me to gain a ton of weight. And I just felt foggy. And I was like, look, I don't want to be like this forever. I'd like to try something else. And so I went off a bunch of medications with my doctor's help. But then she warned me and she said, look, there's a possibility that you might have a manic episode. So if you feel like that's going to happen, or you feel like something's wrong, you need to come back right away. Like go to the hospital if you have to.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I think it was like 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night. And I walked upstairs and I grabbed my keys and I walked up to my dad and I said, I need you to take these. And he's like, what? Like, why aren't you sleeping? I was like, I'm going to run away. And he's like, what? And I'm like, I think I'm manic.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, okay. So we called the doctor the next morning and she's like, okay, yep. And she sent a prescription. I started taking the meds and I was like, okay, now I feel like me again. But I could just tell. And so now even like when my mood spikes one way or the other, I can tell when I'm like going into a potential manic episode. So I can feel that, and I'll tell the people around me, but like, look, this is how I'm feeling. Keep an eye on me, and I'm gonna call my psychiatrist and see if we need to do something. But like it's just it's like I can feel kind of like when you're the flu is starting.
Yeah.
I can feel the manic episode happening, and I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
oh no, this is not. I don't like this feeling. I remember what this feeling is,
Mm-hmm.
and so I can stop it. Not everybody can do that. Not everybody is like that. I'm very very aware of my feelings, and I guess part of that is because I have to be, and part of it is just I've always been that way. I feel my feelings; they're really big usually, so it's hard to ignore them. But
Yeah.
um, that's
Wow. Uh, Rena, Rena473, thank you so much for the $10 super sticker. You are much appreciated. Everybody always knows. I always say when with any donation, with any Cash App or super chat or super sticker, everything goes directly to our nonprofit, which is the Center for Family and Community Empowerment, which provides mental health services for underprivileged, underserved communities. So every dollar and cent that we get goes directly to that. So thank you very much, Rena. That was a that's really powerful. We talked about like I had a person before that. I'm quickly losing my train of thought, but she felt she knew that she was going into a manic episode.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't, that's not what scared her. What scared her is that she knew that the manic episode was what comes right after it,
Mm-hmm.
that depression. Is that, do you notice like the same thing for you? Like, during times when you're up, do you think about, oh no, I know what's coming next. I know that downward spiral is coming.
Yeah, so I don't have a whole lot of manic episodes, or times just because of the medication I'm on. I thank goodness it keeps that on bay. But I do have the depression. So there's times where life is good and I'm like, yeah, this is great. And
Mm.
then it's like, shoot, there is a very big possibility that I'm gonna go through another like bout of depression. And it's terrifying because living through that, like one of my worst depressions, I remember sitting in my bed and mom's like, you gotta get up, we have to go to the doctor. And I was like, I can't. And she's like, okay, like get up and put your pants on, put your shoes on, let's go. And I was like, I don't know how. And she's like, what? And I was like, I cannot put my socks on. I can't figure it out. And she's like, what's wrong with you? So she helped me put my socks on and went to the doctor. Like, yeah, she's severely depressed. And it just my brain shuts down and I can't function. And I like sleeping all day and not sometimes not even sleeping, just laying there frozen. Like I can't function. And it's not a good feeling. And like I remember those times very vividly, and I will do everything in my power to make sure I don't hit that point again.
Now, for you, and thank God for you with getting into the therapy and the medication,
Mhm.
do you find that it relatively? I know you said you don't really have manic episodes, but what about the depression? Does the mood stabilizers kind of keep you even, or how does that kind of work?
Yeah. So I haven't had a really deep bout of depression that's lasted longer than a week or two. And typically, when I'm depressed now, I look at it and I'm like, is this situational or is this actually bipolar disorder? Because a lot of times it's situational and something's
Mm.
happened and has triggered it. I went through a really rough year, and I had some life changes that I wasn't prepared for, and it hit hard and it knocked me off my game. But looking at it, it was like, yeah, I'm not actually I'm not depressed because of my bipolar. I'm depressed because this is an awful situation to be in, and anybody in this situation would be depressed. And so knowing that was really helpful to be able to look at. But
So you did an interesting thing. A lot of times we call it like a reality checking or reality testing.
mhm.
Where did you learn that concept of like, okay, let me actually stop for a minute and think, am I depressed because this is part of what's going on with me in my body, or am I depressed because something crazy just happened to me yesterday?
Yeah, so that's comes with 9 years of therapy. So I've done so many times with my therapist, and I just do it in my head now. She used to have me write it out. I can do it in my head now. When I'm feeling a big emotion, it's like, okay, what is this feeling? This emotion? What am I feeling in my body? Was there something that triggered this? And then kind of looking at like my instincts and how I want to deal with it. What are my coping mechanisms? For the longest time, I had right on my wall, like taped to my wall, was like, when you're feeling this way, we're going to do X, Y, and Z. Because like the whole not being able to put my socks on, I get in a really bad place and I'm like, I don't know what to do. I just like a month or two ago went through a really rough point, and my boyfriend was there and was trying to help me. And he's like, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to help you. And I was like, okay, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to shower. I'm going to eat something. And then if I'm still not okay, we're going to go to the hospital. If I think I might be okay, I'm going to sleep. And then in the morning, if I'm still not okay, then we'll go to the hospital. And he's like, okay. And I got up and I was like, we're going to do it. And he's like, okay. And I showered and I ate something. And I was like, I think I'm just tired. Like I'm still not okay. I'm still depressed, but I think I'm mostly just tired. I'm going to go to sleep and then we'll see how I am in the morning. And sure, my mood wasn't that great, but I was nowhere in crisis mode by the next morning because I did X, Y, and Z. And I remember texting my best friend. I was like, I'm going to do this, this, and this. She's like, good girl. Because she knows like these are the steps. You eat something, you sleep, you shower. And it pulls me out of my funk a lot of times. And then I always call my psychiatrist if I think this is something that's going to like be a long-term issue, or there might be an issue with my meds, but I was able to deal with it, and I was like, okay, I think I'm okay now.
I mean that I look at that as a real blessing and a real, a real appreciation of the process that you allowed yourself to go through in therapy, because that sounds like therapy in itself, and people a
Yeah.
lot of times it has a negative stigma to it, and people don't realize sometimes why you might have to be in therapy for long periods of time. But you're a living example right now of like being able to internalize those different skills and knowledge of how to work through things in order to help you get through. That is amazing. Ms. Ruby Thomas says, Nicole, thank you for your transparency. Mr. Nelson, great questions, empathy, and professionalism. Thank you, Ms. Thomas. Thank you very, very much. This is really amazing. I remember what I was going to say before is that with kids, teenagers in particular, I had a couple of really hard times where parents, and one of the words you used before, burnout, is really, or maybe compassion fatigue is probably the better word, where parents and even siblings can understand or have knowledge of what you're going through. They have knowledge that you have bipolar disorder, but it still doesn't take away the emotional impact that it has and how much it can tire you out. So with one kid, he used to have to, he would have those times when he was really, really down, or of course, or manic, and he might have to go to his mom and say, here, I need you to take this knife from me because I don't know what I'm going to do. And over a long period of time of having those scares and those hospital trips, you can get to that point where it's like, oh God, again, is this real? Like, are you really going to do something? And you start to lose that empathy.
Mm-hmm.
As a kid, did you have to experience anything like that?
Not so much as a kid, because we didn't really understand what it was or why it was, so I wasn't really getting the help that I needed at that point. It just, honestly, it was mostly like just being emotional. You're tired, you're whatever, and it was kind of brushed under the rug. And again, I don't fault anybody for it. It just wasn't something we talked about, and so nobody knew. They didn't have the knowledge to know what it was. I've definitely had people look at me and they're like, "Oh my gosh, you're always depressed," or "Oh my gosh, you're always anxious." It's probably nothing. I'm like, it's pretty real in my head. Let me tell you, I can feel that it's real. And so yeah, I've lost people throughout my life where they're like, yeah, this is not what I want, and I'm like, cool, okay. I'm blessed with the people in my life that are here now that are really, they understand, they know about my mental health stuff, and they're like, yeah, you know what, we got you. We're here for all the highs and all the lows. And
how did that conversation come about with the people that were like, I can't deal with this? Like, how did they broach that subject with you?
Yeah, so some of them, honestly, they just ghosted, which is, that's it. It hurts, but it is what it is. I had one person, she didn't know that I had bipolar disorder at the time, and she was like, "Oh my gosh, those people with mental health issues, like, I can't. It's so made up. It's not real." And I was like, and I didn't know what to say, because I was like, we're just brand new friends, and I didn't want to be like, okay, actually, hi. So I was like, so I just completely I changed the subject. And I was like, I don't want to talk about it. And then of course I added her on Facebook, where I'm very vocal about how I have bipolar disorder, and she's like, yeah, no. I was like, fair. I wish, looking back, I wish I'd said, okay, actually, I think you're misunderstanding, or because I get it. And even my boyfriend, on our first date, he's like, look, I told my best friend, like, you have bipolar disorder and anxiety and everything, and he was like, make sure that she's not using that as an excuse for the way that she's acting. And he said that to me, and part of it hurt a little bit, but I was like, no, it's a fair thing, because sometimes, and usually, it's people who aren't even diagnosed with a mental illness are saying, oh, I'm bipolar, so I do this, or oh my gosh, I'm so depressed, so that's why, or I'm anxious, so I can't do this. And a lot of times it's not even, I'm like, oh my gosh, you're not even diagnosed, what are you doing? And sure, maybe you do have that, and that's fine, but I'm very careful to not blame something on my anxiety or my depression or my bipolar disorder if I'm not going to work on it to make it better. And so I can say, you know what, right now I can't do that because of my anxiety, but here's what I'm going to do instead. And so I can set boundaries, because boundaries are 100% okay. And they're really important. And I can look at people and say, you know what, I can't do this because of my anxiety right now, or I need to cancel this meeting because I'm not doing so great today, but let's reschedule for another day. And I'm very transparent and open like that. But I refuse to blame any action. Even when I was manic, I went back to every single person that I hurt during that manic episode, and I apologized to each one of them. And I said, look, I didn't have control over my actions, but it was still me that did it. And so I want to apologize for that. And I had to repair relationships with a lot of people. But I will never blame how I treat somebody or how I act on my mental health.
That's an amazing thing. And you are absolutely right that so many people, non-diagnosed people, it sounds like, to me, most of the non-diagnosed people are the ones that engage in this. Because I think if you really had that experience and you know what it feels like, you wouldn't talk that way because you understand exactly what it is other people are going through.
Yeah.
But that's just amazing that you put that kind of, we talk a lot about boundaries because a lot of times we're referring to we're dealing with like narcissistic personality disorder and things like that. So boundaries is one of the best things you can put in place in order to be able to deal with those types of relationships. But there's been so many times when people have, or even employers have found out that you're struggling with something, and in their attempts to help, they end up putting more expectations on you. Like, I know that you're upset, but these are the steps that I'm going to need you to take in order to still be able to function at work. Did you ever experience things like that where it's like you knew the boundaries you had to put in place, but other, whether it's work related or some other type of relationship, somebody tried to lay out the structure or the plan for you?
Yeah, like and like trying to set boundaries with me, or
yeah, just in terms of more like expectations that they're trying to set of you now.
Yeah. So I've worked a lot on setting boundaries, and that's one of the things I spent many weeks in therapy on. And I'm a huge I talk about that a lot for business owners, as well as just people in general with setting boundaries. We've had sit down talks as a whole family about this is what's happened, this is what's okay, and this is what's not okay, and going forward, this is how we're going to act as a family. And so having and setting boundaries between family members, as a family. We have some people in our family that are narcissists or untreated with mental illness, and we have to set those boundaries because it's not healthy. And we love them, and we want them to be better and all the things, but we have to set boundaries for us too. And so that's a very common thing.
So I definitely want to dive into kind of some of the later years now and how you've kind of integrated this into the work that you do now. But before we go there, you came to a really low point in your life where you mentioned having suicide attempts. Can you tell us a little bit about like what was going on there, what that experience was like for you?
Yeah, so I had such a long manic episode, and then hit a point where I was severely depressed. I was looking at my life and I'm like, what have I done? I'm looking at my life and it's in shambles, and it's nothing like I envisioned it to be. And I remember going to a therapist, and I was like, this isn't, I don't know what to do with this. And I don't like how this is. She's like, well, change it. And I was like, huh, okay. How? And she's like, oh, well, we'll talk about that next session. And I was like, oh, okay. It was, I didn't go back, which is bad on me because you probably would have helped me. But I was depressed and I didn't know how to fix it. And so I hit a point where I was like, I don't want to feel this way anymore. I didn't really want to die. I just didn't want to feel this way anymore. And it outweighed. I really truly felt like there was no fix to it. I didn't feel like I could go back to my parents and say, hey, I'm not okay. Can I come back home? I didn't feel like I had any of those options. boy, was I wrong, because as soon as my parents found out, they drove to the hospital. They drove 8 hours, showed up at the hospital. We're like, we're going to take you home, because the hospital didn't have the resources to take me in and take care of me. So like, we're going to take you home. We're going to bring you to the hospital here. We're going to get you the help you need. They didn't let me out of their sight for days. And they took care of me, but I truly didn't believe that I had any other options. And so that was really rough. So it's one of the things when I'm talking to people who are depressed, or they're in that place that it will get better eventually. You might have to fight for yourself. You might have to take medication or go to therapy or change your whole situation. But there is a possibility, and there is somebody out there that loves you and cares about you, and you're not alone.
Man, that's amazing. It's a beautiful thing to have family like that
Mm-hmm.
you know, care enough to drop everything and drive 8 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And for you to, what do you think it was that at the time you didn't believe that you could go home? What was your relationship strained with your family at the time, or?
Unfortunately, very Christian household, and I moved in with my boyfriend. So
Okay.
that does it.
Yeah.
So, and because I didn't understand it was my mental health, it was like, well, you're just turning your back on everything you've ever believed. So of course it strained our family. It put us in a really awkward situation. My parents were aware of some of the things I was doing while I was away, and they weren't okay with it. And so I really, when I dropped out of that manic episode and into the depression, it hit me what I had done. And I was like, there's no way they're going to forgive me. So I remember even the night that I attempted, I didn't message them to say goodbye. I messaged somebody else and I asked them to say, I'm sorry to my parents. That's how they found out. They didn't have any contact with me at all. They didn't actually even know where I was. They just assumed it would be in a hospital, and they drove to the hospital and they found me. So that's where I was at. I was like, I don't feel like they're going to ever want me back in their lives. And as soon as they found out, okay, this is a mental health thing, they were like, oh my gosh, yeah, of course, like we're here. And sure, I had to own up for some of my decisions and had to be really open and honest, but like, this is what's going on in my life right now. And, but they were able to help me, which was really amazing.
So during that time, like what was the recovery like after the hospital? What helped you to kind of like get back to, I think I'm okay?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I went through a outpatient program that required me to go in for 3 weeks every single day and do some classes. They taught about different mental health and what happens when you have a panic attack, and how you're not actually going to die despite the fact that you feel like you are. You're not having a heart attack. It will pass. Worst case scenario, you're going to pass out and then you're going to breathe normally, so it's going to be okay. And so talking about like all those things, looking back now, I realized that the reason why they had us come in every single day for 3 weeks was to watch and see if I spiked into a manic episode. But they were keeping track of me and trying to make sure I was okay and everything. Right. So I took that class and I learned a lot about my brain and how I react and what self-care is, because in my head, self-care was doing face masks and bubble baths. And I'm like, I'm not that kind of person, to be honest. I don't want that, which ironically now I love baths, so whatever. But I was like, I don't care. I don't want to do that. And so understanding self-care looks different for everybody. And for me at the time, as weird as it sounds, reading books about serial killers was what caused me to regulate. Don't understand it at all. I can't do it now, so I don't know. It's just a stage of my life. I have all the books still, but and it was a really good series. That like they didn't glamorize what they were doing, so I think that's why it worked. But anyway, not necessarily what other people experienced as self-care, but for me that's what worked.
No, I'm actually really glad you said that, because I think we do associate self-care with like long walks on the beach or a nice bubble bath. Like we do kind of attribute it to that, but it is a lot of it really is things that you enjoy doing. It can be exercise, it can be eating a good meal. It's what works for you. So I'm glad you said that's really interesting that it was like I get my self-care by reading about serial killers, but no, If it works, it works.
Yep, exactly.
So now, kind of moving, moving past that, you had, so okay. Now I did forget to mention, when you at that attempt, was that your first one that you described or your second one?
Second. So it's a really hard conversation. So which is okay. I've told it before. I attempted the first night. Went to the hospital. And they treated me. And then they released me the next morning to a guy I met online.
Whoa.
So yeah. So I went home and I attempted a second time. So at the second time, they were like, we don't know what to do with you. And I was like, well, I don't know, help me, because this isn't working. And so when my parents showed up, they actually pulled my parents aside and said, you need to take her home and you need to get her help. We can't help her here, but if you don't take her home, she's not going to go home ever again. And my parents were like, okay, all right. So they brought me home. They brought me into the crisis center here locally. And that's where I sat down and I told my whole story. And they were like, yep, you have bipolar disorder. And I was like, okay. And it was like this whole weight of like everything. Like I was like, oh, I have a name for this now. Like this is what it is. And I remember the psychiatrist. I actually got to thank her years later, and I'm so glad I did, because she changed my life. She got down in front of me, and I wasn't able to look at her. I was just so ashamed of everything I had done. And I was staring at the ground, and she got down in front of me on her knees. She made eye contact with me, and she's like, this is not your fault. And it was like a wave of like relief, because I was like, oh. Like I beat myself up about it so much, and I didn't feel like I was worthy of love anymore, and all of these things. And so for to have like a complete stranger look at me and be like, yeah, that's not your fault. And I'm like, oh, okay. And knowing that really helped. And it helped jumpstart my recovery after that point.
That is the real crazy thing about counseling and therapy. And I learned this as I was becoming a professional and doing my counseling labs. I was struggling with, and I went, I did my graduate work at a Christian college too. So they integrated those faith-based, teachings. One of the things that I struggled with is when you are just learning the helping profession, you get this really bad urge that like, okay, well, teach me what to say, teach me what to do. How do I really help somebody? And one of the most profound things, it really wasn't profound, but it hit me hard with one of my professors. They said, listen, your work really isn't going to come through learning how to correctly implement cognitive behavioral therapy or, any of these modalities. Sometimes it's really going to be something very simple that you say, or a simple gesture that you make, that is going to cause them to get their healing. So the fact that she can literally just tell you it's not your fault, and for you that was the trigger that just kind of brought everything down, that is just amazing, because you can't teach those things. You cannot teach them.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a question for you. We have a question from Rena473. It says, what does the medication process look like? I've heard that medication isn't a one-size-fits-all, and it can be a while before finding what works. What was the process hard?
Absolutely. So my process of finding the right medication, if I'm being super honest, I just changed my medication today. So it varies. It changes with stages of life and everything. Finding the right medication for me literally took 6 years of trying all sorts of different things and watching my weight fluctuate and different symptoms pop in here and there, and learning all those things. For me, it's not one medication that works. It's a combination of different ones and different dosages of each of those that we had to experiment with to find the right thing. It is never one size fits all. And when I'm talking to people, especially people who are really new to starting to take medication, I'm like, look, listen, you're going to take it and you're like, it's not working. Give it 4 to 6 weeks and then come talk to me. Because I remember taking it, I was like, it's not working. I'm not going to take it anymore. And they're like, no, you got it. Just trust us on this. Keep taking it. And by week 3 or 4, I was like, oh, you know what? I feel a lot better. I'm like, good. You're
Mm.
supposed to. But
Yeah.
it doesn't happen overnight. And that's unfortunately the problem is a lot of people are like, oh, it's not working, and they stop. Or worse, it does work, and they're like, I don't need this anymore, and then they stop taking it. You're like, no, now you're gonna do it all over again. So that was a big thing, and the doctor warned me. She's like, you're gonna feel really great one day, and you'll be like, I don't need to take these anymore. And I'm telling you, you do. Don't stop taking them. And so it is definitely a process. I'm in the process of a weight loss journey. And so I lost 50 pounds, and my medication was way too strong all of a sudden. I was like, okay, we gotta change this.
Wow.
And so, but it's a constant process. I see my psychiatrist every 3 months now. It used to be like every couple of weeks. I'm good where I'm stable. I've been stable for so long that she can meet with me once every 3 months, and we go, okay, this is what needs to happen and touch in, and I can call whenever and get meds adjusted or whatever. But it's a process, and it looks different for everybody, but just keep going.
But no, you said something really important about needing to change the medication based off of your weight.
Mm-hmm.
That we don't talk about that a lot, like the fluctuations in something like in our eating habits. If we make like a severe change in how we eat, or if our weight changes, that's going to impact our dosage. That some medications you might take the same medication but a different brand, and it have a different impact on you. And that's what's hard, especially when I'm dealing with youth. That's what it's really hard to get them to understand that this part is really a process. I need you to sit down every day from day one that you start taking this. I need you to make a note of how you feel, any changes that you feel, and I need you to do that for weeks so that we can start gauging how the medications affect you. That's one of the most difficult things to do. So no, the way you touched on that about that its importance, I'm really glad you talked about that.
Absolutely.
So now you head into adult life, and you found a way to, while you're dealing with it and while you're managing it, you've been able to kind of mold it into your profession and into content creation. So can you tell me just a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I do social media marketing for different businesses. A lot of coaches and mental health related, because it's just right up my alley, right? But we create content for them, so creating graphics, editing videos, writing captions, blogs, emails, all that stuff. Essentially anything that you would see on social media. That's a lot of what we do, and we just try to get people's messages out there the best that we can. We do everything organically. And that's kind of how it started. I've been very vocal about my mental health in the process, which has attracted the kind of clients that I really like. And ironically, when I first started being vocal about it, people were like, you don't want to do that if you're in business. People aren't going to hire you if you're very vocal about that. And I was like, you know what? Then I don't want to work with them. And maybe that was just my whatever personality, but it actually served me really well. I've had people reach out to me like, I want to work with you because you're not afraid to say, this is how I'm doing. And they're like, you're so transparent. I know what you say is what I'm going to get. And so I want to work with you. And so I've literally landed clients because I talk about how I have bipolar disorder. And sure, maybe there's people that see it and they're like, oh, I don't want to work with her. I don't care. They probably aren't going to tell me. And if they do, honestly, I'll probably just block them because I don't care. Just like you, what do you want me to do? But I'm very happy for that. I've gotten to where I am now because of my mental health.
So the services you offer now, you do the graphics, you do offer video editing. Are there any other areas you mentioned?
Yeah, so graphics, video editing, writing captions, blogs, emails. We do a little bit of website stuff, usually through ClickFunnels, honestly, and like writing landing pages and stuff like that. But yeah, we do a wide range of those things.
So I have, I'm friends with a lot of different content creators. The person, my mod that I have on my channel, Gail at Night, she's a great content creator as well. How does that work with them, like getting in touch with you? Like, is there some type of like monthly payment system, or like how do you work out how you do it?
Yeah, so we do month to month. They have contracts that they sign to
Okay.
give me 30 days notice if they're going to leave or whatever. But I used to do like you have to be locked in for 6 months or something. And I discovered that honestly, if they don't want to work with me, it's just making my life as miserable as it is theirs.
Mm.
So I don't want that anymore. We only ask for 30 days notice just so that way, because we create content ahead of time and then it doesn't snooker us where we've done a bunch of work and they're not going to pay us for it. But like it's just month to month. We work with a wide range of people. Some people come and go. Some of our clients have been there right from the beginning, and we get to work with all sorts of different people based off of that.
How can they get in touch with you?
Absolutely. So you can go, honestly, if you just search my name, Nicole Housen, I'm everywhere, but you can go to our website as well. Easiest way to do it is type in Ready Aim Social. So Ready AIM social.com, and go there. You'll be able to learn all about what we do, and whether it's social media or virtual assistants that you need help with, you can reach us all there.
Okay, and I also, you sent me your social links, so
Yes.
you should be. Wait, did it populate right? I'm gonna put these in one at a time, y'all, because like with me just hopping into content creation, I I can tell y'all, and anybody that's been watching my channel long enough to know when I disappear for long periods of time is because I'm burnt out. It
Yeah.
is it is a pain in the butt. So I love being online and
Mhm.
talking and telling different stories of things that's happened and like talking on different topics, but it's a pain in the butt. It takes a freaking lot of research,
Yep.
and then you gotta come up with a nice little script because you gotta keep everybody entertained. You gotta
Yep.
make sure it's within a certain time frame. You gotta make sure that you make proper eye contact, involve your hands, involve pictures. Like what I'm trying to say, it's a whole thing, and
Yep.
it is tiring. I do experience the burnout because we have regular lives just like everybody else. So we still
Mhm.
got our 9 to 5s, and we're all trying to make it big. In thank you for posting that, Gail. Um, we're all trying to make it big in social media or make our imprint, but um, it takes it takes resources like Nicole to be able to really start to get moving on a lot of these things, especially as you're growing. Like as you're growing, you kind of gotta offload some of the things that you're doing to give you more time to focus on like really developing good content. So I'm sure the services that she offers like really helps out with that. So it's a and you're getting a person. You know how hard it is online to find somebody that is transparent.
Mhm.
It is ridiculously there are so many frauds out here. As a matter of fact, tomorrow I'm going to be talking about a situation. I'm not going to get messy, but I'm going to talk about a situation with people that pose online one way and they're really another way in real life, and they're actually scamming people. So that's one thing I really can't stand when dealing with mental health is I don't like relationship gurus. I don't like mental health gurus that don't have any kind of training
Mhm.
information or anything like that are counseling people without licenses.
Mhm.
So I definitely want to make sure everybody's informed on those types of things. I'm still posting the rest of the links. Thank you, Gail, for posting the YouTube. I think we got Instagram. She's everywhere, y'all. She is on every single platform. So don't act like you can't find her anywhere. Got TikTok, and we got Gail did YouTube for me already. But do you have anything else that you'd like to share, Nicole? You let me thank you very much for being able for feeling comfortable enough to even share your story. Like I definitely do not take that lightly. Anything that deals with mental health in our personal lives, it takes a lot of courage to be able to do that. So thank you for
Yeah,
even
of course.
sharing that on this platform.
Yeah, no, thank you for giving me the opportunity to be able to talk to your audience a little bit about it. I think it's something that um, a lot of people have a hard time being open and honest, like, hey, I have bipolar disorder, especially because like you talked about at the beginning, it's got that crazy stigma where we're crazy and it's not us at all. And so it's hard to come out and say like, hey, I have bipolar disorder. But once you understand what that means and what that looks like, it's like, okay, you know what? Actually, you're like everybody else. You just feel big feelings and you need a little bit of support here and there. And once you kind of learn that, it's really great. So I try to be as vocal and honest about that as possible and share my story as much as I can.
Thank you so much. And for those of you that are listening that you don't understand why you feel the way that you feel sometimes, or you feel like something's been off, or you're just not sure, kind of some of the things that you think or what you feel, it is not a bad thing to literally just go talk to a therapist one time just to do a wellness check, just to get their opinion on kind of like your overall mental health. There's mental counseling is not for crazy people. Counseling
Yeah.
is not for people that just suffer from mental illness. Counseling is for everybody. And I sincerely mean that. So people that are depressed, therapy is for you. People that have low self-esteem, therapy is for you. People that aren't happy with where they are at in life, therapy is for you. It's literally for everybody. And those of you that are believers too, it is very important to know that therapists a lot of times have taken the role of what the church is supposed to do. When I
Mhm.
say that, I mean a therapist is supposed to be there to walk alongside you in your pain and your hardest, worst moments. They're there to walk with you, to talk with you, to be there with you. We're supposed to be like that on a regular basis to our neighbors, but it's not. Society hasn't been functioning that way. But don't be afraid to talk to a therapist just about what's going on in your life. For some of you, it could really change your life and it'll do well. It obviously has done really well for Nicole, successful in business. And it is tough growing up not being able to put a name to some of these things.
Oh,
So
for
for
sure.
her to be able to really come through and thrive because of that, that's a testament to the greatness of God and her resilience and toughness. So
Mhm.
thank you so much. But that's where we're gonna leave it for tonight, y'all. If you are watching this at a later date, please let me know if you guys want to have bring Nicole back to dig deeper into any of this. I try to keep it relatively light so that way we can get through a lot of topics. But if you guys want a deeper conversation on any of this, Nicole is a great wealth of knowledge. So I would love to. I'm definitely going to have her back when we dig deeper into it. But you know where to reach her. Leave feedback on the channel if there's any topics that you would like to hear about. Um, and that is all I have for you guys. So thank you guys for joining in. Thank you for the guys that and girls that tune in later on. Thanks, Rena. Thank you, Gail. Thank you, Lioness of Videography. Rashawn, thanks for stopping by. And you know what, Ane, Nia, I probably said it wrong. Please send the phonetics again because I asked you for it before and you sent it to me and I know I just butchered it again. But thank you for coming out. Either way, I will talk to you. I'll be right back on tomorrow. So I will see you guys tomorrow. It'll be a little bit later on, probably around 8 o'clock or 8:30. But I will see y'all tomorrow. Thanks a lot, guys. Take care.